toughest job in the world just got tougher.
Everyone surely knows how dangerous trucking over ice is, but that's exactly what makes History Channel's Ice Road Truckers so interesting. For 11 seasons, the show caught the attention of millions of people in the US and many other countries by giving an insight into one of the most risky professions in North America, such that the audience couldn't help but start to care about the truckers' lives on and off camera. However, while it's been a while since the show was ended in 2017, it hasn't been easy to forget some of the accidents and misfortunes that surround some of the show's former cast members, including the unfortunate deaths of some. So take a seat as we review the tragic real-life endeavors of Ice Road Truckers, tell you who are no longer with us, and what has happened to those who are still on the road. Accidents often happen on roads and highways covered by snow and ice, and while many of those aren't fatal, deaths do happen from time to time. However, the way that Ice Road Truckers' fan-favorite driver Darrell Ward lost his life at 52 years of age didn't happen on the road, making his death not only sad and unfortunate, but also unexpected. The tragic incident occurred on the 28th of August 2016, when Darrell was piloting a Cessna 182 airplane on his way back from a trucking event in Texas to Missoula, where he was supposedly expected to start filming a documentary focused on airplanes. Although we don't know much about said project, fate definitely had other plans for Darrell. He was killed when the airplane crashed while trying to land at a private airport near Rock Creek in Montana. The cause of the terrible accident that also resulted in Darrell's unknown co-pilot's death wasn't completely cleared up in the report by the National Transportation Safety Board. As it was stated, no mechanical anomalies were found during the post-accident examination, and while it was determined the airplane had taken a sudden turn when close to landing, it remains a mystery if that was due to weather conditions or something else. Whatever caused it, the loss was unimaginably sad for everyone who got to know Darrell, and above all, to his family. Darrell Ward was the father of 2 children, and as you can expect, they were deeply saddened by his loss. In his daughter Tara's case, she had been living in Kansas for a while at the time of her father's death. But regardless of the distance, it seems that he was always a caring father and grandfather. When it comes to Darrell's son Reno, he was in his senior year at the University of Montana Western when he was hit with the terrible news. It hasn't sunk in yet what actually happened, he expressed during an interview with Montana News at the time, clearly still in disbelief. In the same interview, Reno expressed a desire to finish his last year of college to honor his dad. And while we didn't expect him to continue his father's legacy in the work field as well, that's exactly what happened. A year after Darrell's death, Reno made his debut in Ice Road Truckers by teaming up with Lisa Kelly to deliver a large load for Polar Industries. Fortunately, his endeavor turned out well, but it was clearly an emotional rollercoaster for him and his family to take his dad's place. Nonetheless, that episode will remain as one of the most memorable from the 11th season. Probably this name doesn't sound familiar to you, but Jordan Fedosoff was an assistant driver during the 2nd season of Ice Road Truckers. Not much is known about Jordan's death, except for the fact that he died in February 2020 after suffering several respiratory complications related to surgery. His former fellow cast members Rick Yem sent his condolences on a Facebook post, and Jordan's family and friends even organized a memorial event in his honor. Although Darrell Ward and Jordan Fedosoff have been the only Ice Road Truckers cast members to have died, other truckers have also gone through terrible and life-threatening accidents in recent years, regardless of the fact that he only joined Ice Road Truckers in its 7th season. It's hard to forget Todd Dewey for his straightforward behavior and preference for driving highly challenging roads. Recently, Todd was involved in a terrible accident when a car collided with his log truck in the early morning of the 9th of January 2019 in Washington State. Though Todd was fortunately uninjured, the crash resulted in the unfortunate death of the car's driver, Stephen John Jacobson, and his unidentified passenger, in the addition to the total destruction of their automobile. While it's unknown if the accident resulted in any material loss on Todd's side, it was stated that the victim's family wouldn't press charges against Todd or his company, as the crash was apparently unintentional from both parts. Leaving that terrible incident behind, Todd Dewey's life has luckily been going well during the last couple of years. He's been attending both international and national trucking events and is even involved with charity organizations. Also known as Polar Bear, Hugh Roeland was one of the longest running truckers, starting from the 1st up to the 9th Ice Road Trucker seasons. However, he left the show suddenly and for a good reason. As it turns out, in 2014 he sued the show for apparently ruining both his career and marital life, the product of an accident he blamed solely on the show's production. The incident actually happened in 2013, when Hugh was in the passenger seat of a pickup driven by Will Morrison, one of Ice Road Truckers' producers. Following Hugh's allegations, Morrison had been driving the automobile quite recklessly, resulting in a crash that left Hugh severely injured from the waist down. After receiving medical treatment, it turned out that he was unable to return to his job as a trucker, and just as terrible, his marital life was over as well. It's not clear how the lawsuit turned out, but we can assume that he was compensated for the damage out of court. To be clear, you couldn't blame Polar Bear for thinking about loss of intimacy as a reason for suing, as in recent years, those types of lawsuits have been quite common and well compensated as well. Since the accident, Hugh has maintained a low profile on social media, but it's assumed that he's still in charge of his trucking and construction companies, even if his days as a driver are now left behind. The name Brett Colley surely doesn't sound familiar to you, but that's expected, as he was never in Ice Road Truckers. So you might be wondering why we're now including him in this article. The reason is that Brett was greatly inspired by the show, to become an ice road trucker. In his path to follow his life's dream, he even moved out from England to North America. While it's unknown if Brett had any previous experience as a trucker, he apparently tried the US roads for a while before moving to Canada. However, fate wasn't very kind to him when on the 13th of November 2012, his truck left the Alaska Highway in the Pink Mountain region, and as you might have already guessed, he lost his life in the terrible accident. When interviewed by Business Insider, Brett's sister Alex Fido affirmed that he had applied to appear in Ice Road Truckers, but was rejected by the show's producers. He subsequently continued unsuccessfully trying to appear in it until his unfortunate death. You might remember Art Berg for appearing in Ice Road Truckers from the 7th season up to the show's end in 2017, and for having a tough personality and determination that somehow always helped him on the road. Unfortunately, Art hasn't had good luck as of recently. In late 2018, tragedy knocked on his door unexpectedly when he was involved in the explosion of an apartment in Yellowknife, Canada, that caused severe damage to the building's structure and left him severely injured. At first, the police apparently didn't report the case, and it was determined that his identity would be hidden. But later the case attracted so much attention that the local media had no other option than to reveal that he was the accident's culprit, which was caused when he confessed to trying to make cannabis resin using butane. Not only was Art found guilty of arson, but he will also have to pay over $70,000 in damages to the apartment's owners. However, despite pleading guilty in early 2020, his sentence hearing has been delayed several times since then. In addition to the already bad-looking situation, Art has apparently lost his retirement saving in the process, apart from being unable to return to the road for some time. Rick Yem is considered one of the most scandalous cast members of Ice Road Truckers. Although he left the show entirely after the 6 seasons end, his way of saying goodbye was quite memorable, as he straightforwardly expressed his dislike for the show during an interview with Wholick.com, stating that the way Ice Road Truckers made him look on screen was very different to what he really is. Nowadays, you can find Rick very actively posting on his Facebook page. However, his days driving on the Alaskan icy roads came to an end in 2018, when he underwent shoulder surgery that left him unable to drive a truck anymore. Despite the very gloomy and sad things that have happened to some of the aforementioned Ice Road Truckers, not everything is bad news for the rest of the cast. For starters, Dave Redmond's life is good nowadays. Though he no longer drives trucks, he's well known in his community for doing charity work. If that sounds unbelievable, considering his firing from the show was apparently caused by his bad attitude, please remember that Dave has affirmed that his real-life attitude is anything but rude. When it comes to the fan favorite Lisa Kelly, life is looking good as well. Nowadays, she continues driving trucks as much as she can, attending trucking events with regularity, and is still happily married. In Jack Jesse's case, he still often drives trucks, though there has been a noticeable change in his work routine since his wife Judy nowadays accompanies him on the road while producing a web show based on his everyday life. Last but not least, Alex Debogorski is actively working not only as a driver, but as a writer as well, which is something that makes the very expert driver quite happy. If you want to keep updated on what he's doing, you can find him on his very active Facebook page. One of the things Ice Road Truckers is mainly known for is for showing how dangerous and risky the icy roads of Canada and the US are, though it's undeniable that this is also the reason the show is very negatively criticized. But why? Seeing it from the perspective of someone who has never driven a very heavy load over an ice-covered road, or someone who has never even had any experience as a trucker, it's undeniable that the work the show's drivers do looks impossibly complicated and dangerous. However, some real-life truckers consider that the seemingly real experiences shown in Ice Road Truckers are inaccurate and probably too focused on the drama. During an interview with the website ProCurious, the president of the Alaska-based company Ventures West Transportation, Glenn Bauer, affirmed that although the dangers of driving over ice are considerable, the trucking businesses have reduced the risks by demanding truckers follow very strict security norms. Although reducing the risks this way is the reason the fatality rates for this job are actually very low, it also means that the weather, the truckers' own caution, and their ability are the deciding factors when it comes to delivering supplies and food safely to Alaska's most remote regions. So whether or not what we see on screen is all real, it's certain that Ice Road Truckers was a very good source of entertainment, and that virtually all truckers depicted in the series are actually great at what they do. Thank you for spending some time with us. Make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss another video. We also handpick these videos which we recommend you watch next. You can talk to us on all social medias or ask a question in the comments below. Thank you for being with us, and we'll see you back tomorrow.